I do have a little bit more to say about the Jamal Adams trade. Number one, the 49ers were potentially in the market for Jamal Adams. And in my opinion, part of why the Seattle Seahawks needed to get Jamal was because they needed to keep him away from their division rival, the 49ers. They could not afford to let the 49ers add him to their roster and make the gap even bigger between the Seahawks and the 49ers. Now, number two, think about it this way. Jamal Adams really helps the Seahawks stop 49ers tight end George Kittle. George Kittle is the best tight end in the entire NFL, and the entire division of the NFC West has slowly begun reacting and adjusting to George Kittle, where the Cardinals drafted linebacker Isaiah Simmons to get a guy who physically could keep up with George Kittle. And now the Seahawks have added Jamal Adams, who's another guy who can guard Kittle 2 games a year in those matchups. Now, the most frustrating part, as I reflect on the Jamal Adams trade and the entire saga of him getting out of New York, the narrative that has been created about Jamal Adams, calling him a diva and a troublemaker, is really bothersome and really frustrating, because here's the reality. Jamal Adams wants to win. And the Jets culture, in my opinion, and clearly in Jamal Adams' opinion as well, is that the Jets culture is a mess. And it starts with Adam Gase, a head coach who is not very confidence-inspiring. I think even New York Jets fans would say, yeah, we're really not the biggest Adam Gase fans either. We kind of understand where that's coming from. And I know there's a lot of anger at Jamal Adams, but you got to think about it this way. From a player's perspective, he's 24 years old. He was drafted by the New York Jets. He really didn't choose to play where he landed. And the only way that Jamal Adams was going to get out of New York was by making a lot of noise. He had to be very loud and do some ridiculous stuff to get traded away, because he's really talented. Why would any team want to get rid of Jamal Adams? It doesn't make sense. The only way you're going to get moved out of New York is if you make a lot of noise and become a guy that people don't want to be in the building. So Jamal Adams did everything he could to get out of New York. He asked for an insane amount of money. He wanted a raise, a giant contract. He demanded a trade. He bashed the organization. He did everything he possibly could in his power to leave and get out of the Jets. And in the end, Jamal Adams got what he wanted. He got out. And I don't think that Jamal Adams is an unreasonable person, but I do believe he was desperate for a change. And when somebody's desperate, they do anything it takes to get their goal achieved. And the reality is Jamal lost faith in the Jets organization and in their leadership. And I don't blame him. To me, it explains his contract demands very perfectly when you go, why was he demanding so much money from the Jets? Well, if he believes that the Jets are a place where he can't win and has a really bad and bleak future, then if I'm going to be miserable for the next 10 years of my career, or the next however many years of my career in New York, if I'm going to be miserable, I at least want to make a boatload of money to make up for my misery. And people say that he's going to demand a ton of money in Seattle. And I'll be clear, I have no doubt that Jamal Adams is going to sign a record-breaking contract in Seattle. Sure. Okay. And he deserves it. Jamal Adams is a top 10 player in the NFL. And the salary cap is about to go up. Plus, he's only 24 years old. He's entering the prime of his career right now this year. And I do believe Jamal Adams is going to be happy in Seattle. He's going to be happy. They have a good culture. He's going to be winning games. Oh, I'm sure that's going to be great after a couple years in New York. And the fact that Jamal Adams is going to be happy on a winning team with a good culture, in my opinion, gives Seattle a little bit of wiggle room. So maybe they get Jamal Adams to knock down the price just a little bit because he's actually happy and he's actually in a place where he wants to be. Again, I've got no doubt it'll be a record-breaking contract. But if he's happy in Seattle, he might sign for a couple million fewer than he would have in New York, and I think it's undeniable. And I think part of why he asked for so much money in New York was, if I'm going to be here and miserable, I want to get a boatload of money, and if the more money I ask for, the less likely it is that the Jets will want to keep me around, and the more likely it's going to be that I'm going to be traded away. Some of it was negotiation tactics and him trying to get out of New York. But I want to go back to that narrative that Jamal Adams is a troublemaker, because to me, it's just silly. It's wrong. It's not fair. It's not good. Maybe it's fair because he did do some stuff to try to get out of there. Fair enough, I guess. But it's just, if you're going to say Jamal Adams is a troublemaker and a cancer to your locker room, I just do not buy it. One of the things you can see on film is a player's preparation. And it's very clear when you watch Jamal Adams. He's very prepared. He does an extreme amount of work. His work ethic is incredible. I know I don't need to be in the building. I can watch on film. The product speaks for itself. Jamal Adams works his tail off. And there's no way a guy works that hard and is that bad for a locker room, because Jamal Adams is hungry to win. And I just, man, it's a false narrative about Jamal Adams that he's bad or a troublemaker. He's a passionate, hardworking dude who desperately wants to win. And when you work really hard, then of course you're going to want to have success as a team. I'm putting all this work in, and we're still winning 4 games a year, 5 games a year? What? It would be infuriating. Part of why I work alone is because it's really frustrating to rely on other people and other people's work ethic and the culture that you can't necessarily set because you're not the person in charge. That's why I never want to work for a sports network. And Jets fans have been awful to Jamal Adams. They look like a spiteful ex. Jets fans, I get it. You feel rejected and you're mad. But the reality is that Jamal Adams was just honest about the Jets' dysfunction. He wanted out. He's not a troublemaker. He's a guy who was desperate for a change, and he got the change he wanted. I don't think Jamal Adams is a troublemaker. I think he did what he had to get out of New York. And I had to get that off my chest. I think part of why Seattle traded for him was to help them beat George Kittle. They also traded for him a little bit to keep him away from the 49ers. And I really don't think Jamal Adams is going to be a problem in the Seattle Seahawks locker room because he's going to be happy to be there. He's bought in, and he believes in the leadership. And the minute you don't believe in the leadership of the people you're part of, I remember when I was in college, I had a professor who kept telling me, man, Zach, you're going to have to go work in a dinky little town in Montana, work as a local news reporter, and then maybe that'll lead you to a local radio gig in a podunk town with nobody there. And if you spend 5 years with a local podunk radio station, maybe you'll get a bigger market like Sacramento, and then maybe from there you'll go to Portland, and then maybe eventually you'll be on a national stage. And I went, that's stupid. Why would anybody take that path? And from then on, I really had problems with my professors because their vision did not align with mine. And the culture that they had in my old college, I'll say it, Washington State and Pullman, I really hated the communication program. I have no problem saying that. I had professors who were very unhelpful to me that said I would never succeed on YouTube and said that YouTube was a stupid career and you couldn't make any money. I'm okay. I'm doing very well. And my point is that when you lose out on, and I'm spiteful, no problem. I will admit that. But my point is that when you lose faith in the people guiding you, you lose faith in the leadership leading the way, you got to get out. And you got to do everything you can to get out because once you lose faith in where you're headed, it's all snowballed from there.